Welcome back to episode 3 of the Higher Sense podcast show. I'm your host, DC Butler. We are minus one other host. My cousin extraordinaire, Daniel, has been called away to business, and he will not be with the show. Hopefully he can make some return guest appearances from time to time. But we will miss you. So today's episode is entitled Return of Our Magic. We're going to be talking about finite rules and laws that we've been taught, but we're in an infinite universe. So where does the expansion come in and the promises that we hear for prophecy? So over the next two episodes, we're going to be talking about God is a frequency and heaven is a state of consciousness. This episode, I'm going to be focusing on God is a frequency. I was able to get some really good feedback over the weekend. We went to me and my wife were invited to a birthday party with a lot of our friends and was able to spend some time with a very special friend of mine from the inner circle and got some feedback about his experience with the books and the podcast. So I'm going to share that with you today because I think it's some great insight, and I'll give you my take on the conversation, and I'll give you where I would like to head with the show based off of this conversation and why we've been doing the format that we've been doing also. So to give you a lot of back information. So my friend says, man, I really am enjoying your book and your podcast, but I find myself getting frustrated because I know that you have some really deep information for me, but it seems like you're just giving us breadcrumbs. And I said, well, yes, I am trying to splatter a bunch of information out there so that you will know different options and different things to even look into, because there's so much information. You may not know avenues that can be looked into or questioned. And I said, well, did you finish the book? And he said, well, no, I've been busy. I haven't been able to finish the book. And I said, well, I do take you on a whole lot of informational detours with these breadcrumbs. I said, but I do tie it up at the end of the book. And he said, well, I was so interested in your second podcast, Divine Inheritance. He said that was so intriguing. He said, but again, I found myself 11 minutes in, you had not really defined what this divine inheritance was. And I said, well, did you listen to the end? And he said, no, man, just busy. You know how it is. I said, well, I know how it used to be. So that's what we want to work towards and focus on. Is this information freeing you, getting your divine inheritance back, figuring out what is going on, how do we achieve a higher sense of our reality? It's not a mystery or a secret. It's about tuning in to a higher frequency and vibration. In the book under, I believe it was sound, I talked about using the right tools or tuner. So right now, all around us is radio stations. There's radio stations playing around us all the time. But we don't hear these radio stations unless we have the right tool, a tuner, to tune into that station so that we can hear it in our reality. It's the same way as in my clinic, I take x-rays. Using that tool, I can see inside someone's body, and I can see the structure of their bones and joints and see how things are articulating so that I can free up those muscles and nerves so that the body can communicate and you can get the best out of it. Also, like a snake sees in heat. Well, we can see in heat if we use infrared goggles. So it's all about the tuner and tuning in. Do we have these innate capabilities inside us? They've just been suppressed. You know, what can be released in the DNA? What senses can be turned on? How many helices of DNA do we have? Do we have dormant DNA helices? How many senses do we have? Do we have sacred senses? So these will be different avenues that we're going to look into. But today I really want to focus on the frequency. So in Sanskrit, it's ancient writings, Om stands for the 3 and 1. You have omnipotent, omnipotent, omnipresent. In Exodus 3:14, Moses asked God, "What is your name?" And the reply is, "I am." Or could that be done as I am? Is God the frequency? And did we get this reiterated in the New Testament with Jesus? Jesus says, "I am the truth, the light, and the way." So was he telling us it's the frequency? Is the truth, the light, and the way? Can you all hear me? In John chapter 14, Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and we will be satisfied. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him because he abides with you, and he will be in you. On that day, you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you." This scripture is telling you that we have a unity consciousness, a collective consciousness. It's telling you that you're a fragmented essence of the divine creator. We are all one. When we wake up to that fact, the world's going to elevate to the utopian society that's been talked about. You are literally having a separation experience from the divine source. Are y'all still there? In the second letter to the Corinth, Paul writes in chapter 5, "For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. He who has prepared us for this very thing is God, who has given us the Spirit as a guarantee." In this chapter, this is speaking about the spirit man versus embodiment, and how we will return again and again. Time is an illusion, and this illusion allows for growth. If you're in a heavenly realm, an ethereal realm where things are instantaneous, there's no place to grow. Now, if you come to a denser dimension that allows you to make a mistake and then wallow in your mistake, you have the time to grow. So, have you ever been in a situation where you didn't quite handle the situation like you would have liked? When you left, you think of all these things that you could have performed action-wise, all these things you could have said in place of how you responded. Well, that's your time to grow. The illusion of time. We're taught that time runs on the cycle of the sun and the moon. And then the way that our calendars have been laid out, we've gotten away from how it was done in the ancient past. It was called sidereal time. And this time was mapped with the location of the constellations. So God creates this amazing universe and puts these planets, stars, suns, moons, life in the universe. That's God's time. It would be timelines where time and space is relative to where your conscious soul is. And it would all have to do with a frequency and a vibration. So, it's time to awaken to the fact that God is the frequency of love. We talked about it in the last podcast, how you have two choices in every situation. You're in a duality state of reality. That was the birth of duality when you have the Adam and Eve story. It was the separation that occurred when Eve was separated from Adam. Adam was, air quotes, the perfect man made in the image of the divine. So it had male and feminine consciousness. And then that separation occurred, and now we find ourselves in a male conscious dominated society, and we have been pulled apart, if you will, and we're told through the act of finding your mate, you bring that female and male consciousness back together. Through the physical, you can attain the spiritual. But nothing can be done external. It's all within. Your male and feminine side has not been separated. It's always been inside you. The Song of Solomon speaks about he enters the bedchamber to be with his bride. Well, he's going to sleep. Your consciousness is your brain. Your subconscious is your heart. And that's your male and feminine side. That's when the pineal gland releases the melatonin, puts to sleep your physical body, and then the two merge. Now, in the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 21, Paul states that the male is the head and the female is the heart, and the female is subservient to the male, which would create a hierarchy, a separation, an external division where it puts the man above the female, which we have to wake up to the fact that that's got to be rectified. It's got to be a dual balance within each of us. That's your awakening. In the second half of my book, I go through my awakening experience. And I asked for it. People say, well, how did you receive your truth? I said, well, first of all, I was broken down and I cried out for it. I asked for it. And I said, now the tricky part is when you ask for it, seek and you will find, knock and the door shall be opened. When it's revealed, you can't say, no, well, that's not it, because that's not what I know. It's not going to be what you know. It's going to be how you grow. And I made my transformation from the written word to the living word. And an example would be, I was with a group of guys the other day at our church, and they were talking about praying, and how do you pray? And I said, well, the way I pray is I smile at someone, or I laugh, or tell someone I love them. It's not about the prayer that you say, it's how you become a living prayer. You become a living prayer for yourself first. You have to love yourself. Then you heal yourself, and then you're able to go out and help others heal. So becoming the living prayer, it is encoded in your DNA. In the Old Testament, New Testament, throughout Scripture, it says, for it is written upon your heart. Look, the Bible is a wealth of knowledge, but it's a book that closes and it has a period at the end of it. God is eternal, infinite, organic, living. It's living inside of you. So, things I can say, like when I was having a discussion with my friend, I said, it's not about me teaching you everything. All I can do is be a spark that ignites something inside you, and then the God inside you fans that flame. So he did also say one more really interesting thing. He said, well, look, I did want to mention one thing that you said in that second podcast. He said, you mentioned an internal pharmacy inside of us. And he said, something clicked inside me. He said, I just knew that that was correct. And I knew that I'd known this before, but I've not known it in this lifetime. I said, there you go. There's the spark. There has a spark occurred with that information. He goes, yeah, but then you didn't follow up on it. You didn't tell me about the internal pharmacy. I said, but you got the spark. That's your key. I'm not going to be able to give you all the information. I would love to. Once you wake up to your truth, a lot of the things I say is going to make a whole lot more sense. But the spark is the key. And the love is the frequency. As we all start waking up to those sparks, the frequency will arrive as a collective. We all wake up to the fact that there should not be hierarchy, separation, division. There should just be the love frequency. So choosing love in every situation, no matter what, will, I promise you, change your life. All right, so I've got another cool thing. Probably 2.5 weeks ago, I was hanging out with another friend of mine, and we started talking about a few scriptures in the Bible, and it just clicked. Because we were talking about the end times that the apostles were wanting to learn from Jesus. Now, I know growing up as a Christian, I was taught that a zodiac sign was nothing that we needed to worry about. It was not something that was in the Bible. Well, my zodiac sign would be Cancer. I just celebrated my birthday 2 weeks ago. So I'd be Cancer. So if you start at the beginning of the year, become Capricorn, ends the year and starts the beginning of the year, then you go into Aquarius, and Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, then you come to Cancer, June 22nd to July 22nd. So we started throwing out some stories. And I said, well, the Bible begins with Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, 2 of every animal on a boat with Noah. You got Jacob and Esau. This is a pattern of Gemini. It's twins. It's 2s. And so a zodiac sign would last 2,160 years. So a complete cycle through a zodiac calendar would be just over 26,000 years. So time, an end of an era, would just be the beginning of a new era. Now, then we start diving into a few other stories that, well, wait a minute, Moses comes off of a mountain, and he sees what the Israelites are doing, building a golden calf, and he smashes the tablets on the calf, and then he melts the calf down. Well, that would put an end to Taurus. Actually, it's in line. It lines up in the zodiac calendar, but going backwards. Again, I mentioned last time I switched my name to DC Butler because the more I started looking into things, we've been taught things backwards. So there's another story about Abraham, and he's going to sacrifice his son Isaac at the wish of God. Well, at the last minute, God replaces Isaac with a ram that he sacrifices. He puts an end to an age again, right? The end of Aries. Aries is a ram. So in the Bible, we have now found Gemini, Taurus, Aries. Well, Jesus was born in the 2nd century of Pisces. Pisces is 2 fish. Jesus was known as a fisher of men. And the Christian symbol, you could probably draw it out and see my finger as I'm doing it. I'm drawing out the fish. And then if we go to Luke chapter 21, the apostles asked Jesus for signs and preparations for the end of time. Well, Luke chapter 22, verse 10, Jesus says, Go into town, and you will find a man with a water pitcher. Follow him to the upper room which I have prepared for you. Aquarius is a man with a water pitcher. The end of time is just the beginning of a new time in an eternal covenant. It's eternity. So there is no end. It's just the beginning of something new. That's how the Bible reads to me. I know people, when I read the Bible out loud, they say, well, that's not what it quite meant. Well, that's what it says. So, if you go back to my birth month, Cancer is a water sign. So that means the end of my era would have been a great flood. So, looks like we can find these end of times and beginning of new times all throughout our Bible. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed bringing back the magic through the frequency. Allow the love to flow, and the magic will return. Next episode, we're going to restate that God is a frequency and heaven is a state of consciousness, and we will talk about what and that state is and how we can achieve that state of consciousness. So, thank y'all so much for listening. If you would like to follow along with us, we have a website called thehighersense.com. It has a link to our Facebook page. It has a link to the show, the podcast. And please, if you're liking the podcast, you tell your friends, follow along, get some notifications, know when new podcast comes out. Also, on the website, thehighersense.com, we do have a tab for the books, which take you to my author page on Amazon. You can get updates of the new books that I'll be releasing. I will be releasing another book entitled The Higher Sense, A Search for the Sacred Senses. So thank y'all so much. I hope you're enjoying this. I'm having fun doing it. We'll see you next time.